to loosen it up, you just take your thighs and just roll it over, and it loosens it up. The hole has to be as big or bigger than the pot. We like to use AgriLife for fertilizer. It's an organic fertilizer and the plants love it. For a plant this size, we just need 1/4 to 1/2 a cup of fertilizer. Sprinkle it in the hole, fluff it in, take the plant out, being gently. Look at the roots, they're nice and white and fluffy. Put the plant in the hole and notice where these are growing tips. This plant is going to grow in this direction and in this direction. Pay attention to that because you don't want it this way because it's going to grow that way. So plant it where you want it to grow. And the pot, the soil, needs to be at the ground level or above because you don't want it to sink in. The water will pool here and cause the rhizomes to rot. So this is where I want it. So I'm going to backfill it with the dirt. You don't take your feet, you don't stomp it in. It'll be loose. And this is a pretty raised bed, so I'm pretty confident that that's the perfect position for it. This is a little mulch. You can put a little mulch over it. And that's exactly how I want my hedychiums to look. Got a little identifier. Sorry.
Here we go.
I lost it.
That's okay.
This is Costus physiligulatus, or African princess ginger, or African princess costus. This is a costus, not a real ginger. And the best thing about costus is they have a true stem. These are true stems and spirally arranged leaves, and they either have a basal bloom or a terminal bloom at the tip of its leaf stalk. On this one, look at those beautiful roots. You can actually take to the middle of it and fluff it around a little bit to try to get it to grow downward. Again, we're going to use AgriLife as our fertilizer. And this size pot, again, 1/4 cup to 1/2 a cup. Throw it in there and mix it up. Place your plant in here. See where you want it. I want it this way. Now, you backfill it, making sure, absolutely sure, that the level of this pot, the level of the soil, is at or above the level of the surrounding ground. Then you can add a little mulch to it, and you're done. Now what happens, which is often the case, if you accidentally break off a stem while planting it or in transport, so you've got the stem, and you're like, oh man, what am I going to do with this? This is a great little plant cutting. You take it, and you see the leaves, and from each leaf is attached to the stem by a leaf sheath. Tear off gently. Tear off the leaf sheath. There's no screaming involved. Nobody's getting hurt. And you just take it, and then with a little bit of your nail, you peel off the leaf sheath. And when you do that, you're actually exposing the node. At every single node, you'll find a little triangle. You can barely see that. A little triangle, and that little triangle is a bud. From that bud, we'll produce, maybe, if you're lucky, we'll produce a plantlet, or plant. So you peel them. And sometimes when I'm in a hurry, I don't bother peeling them. But this one I'm just going to show you why. All right, we'll do one more. Peel off the leaf, peel back the leaf sheath to expose the node. And when you do that, you are giving it a better chance to root. So you've got 1, 2, 3 exposed. I'll do one more. Gently use your nail and peel it back. Now, this plant's not going to bloom anymore because it doesn't have the roots, it doesn't have the energy. So you cut off the rhizome. Excuse me, you cut off the flower, the inflorescence. And you've got 3 leaves, which are still too many. I like to leave at least 2 halves or 1 large leaf on a cutting like this. So I'll cut the leaves in half. And I will usually, my shovel's gone. I will usually plant the cutting next to the plant, and that way I'll always remember what it is. So you just give it a nice little ditch. Lay it in there so that the nodes will actually touch dirt. Cover it. Do not fertilize it. You don't need to fertilize it. The energy in the stem will be enough to produce little plantlets. And in a month, you'll easily see a little plant like this. I do it all the time here in the gardens. I will lay down a broken stem and it produces these little plantlets. Now you can leave it in the ground, they'll grow bigger, the roots will grow down, the plant will grow bigger, or you can just take this, cut this off and put it in a 4-inch pot and you've got yourself a new little cutting. You turn a tragedy into a goodness. And I always put the plant tag in. There. Now, these are globas. These are the new globas from Tim Chapman. This is Globa Perfect White. This is Globa Perfect Purple. They're the brand new globas. It's very exciting. They have a Globa Winidii type inflorescence. These are typical dancing ladies. They have that long pendant inflorescence with colorful bracts. And these are so exciting because they produce bulbils. They will produce bulbils behind the inflorescence as well as in its leaf axils. Now, these were shipped from Thailand late last fall. And so they had to be treated in a special way in order to ship to the United States. And so they are still just now breaking dormancy. Globas are typically the last ones to break dormancy in late spring, like May, late May or early June. So it's not uncommon for a globa to be dormant like this. So you might receive a little plant like this or a pot like this that just has that growing tip, but it's perfectly all right. Now, what's so important about this, you cannot plant these like this. It has to be a full growing plant in order for you to plant them in the ground. This is Globa Schomburgkii. This is a Globa too. It's a yellow dancing lady. And you have to let it totally leaf out. Globa Schomburgkii are usually the first ones to leaf out and usually the first ones to bloom. So you have to wait for that to grow up a little bit more, like in 2 or 3 weeks before you can plant it out in the garden. If you plant it now, they might drown because they don't have the leaf structure or the root structure to absorb as much water as you're putting out into the regular garden. So on this one, it's the same thing. You want to make sure it's at the right planting depth. About 1/4 cup still of fertilizer. It's a little deep, so you can backfill it. That looks good. So you take your shovel, fill it in. See, it's a little above the ground level, which I love. And so now you can top it off with mulch. Mulch is great. It helps to keep the plant cool in the summer, and it really helps the plant. It's like a blanket in the wintertime. Right, we often put down a blanket of pine needles in late November so that it's to keep the rhizomes nice and warm. This is curcuma. This is a hidden ginger. This is Curcuma Raspberry, so called because her comas are raspberry color. She's a hidden ginger because her inflorescence is shorter than her leaf height. so that in order to enjoy the inflorescence. This is Curcuma twister. She is a Siam tulip ginger above the leaf height. Sometimes the leaves fall away from the bloom, but she's very pretty. Bracts normally face upward. Some bracts look more like a Siam tulips to bloom in the springtime. She's a pretty little thing, and she gets about 15 inches tall. She's a beautiful little Siam tulip. Now this is how you would plant Kakuma Raspberry. Kakuma Raspberry is kind of special because she blooms in the spring as well as in the summertime. These are remnants of her old blooms. They're on short bloom stalks, but in the summertime, the plant gets taller and her inflorescences get taller. As a mature plant, this plant can grow 3 feet and her inflorescence can be 2 feet. She's really, I mean, the inflorescence itself is only 10 to 12 inches, but the bloom stalk is that long. Again, you throw in your AgriLife, 1/4 to 1/2 cup. And whenever you plant a plant, oh, that gorgeous root system, whenever you plant a ginger, or any plant actually, water it in well afterwards. As you can see, this is a little slightly above the soil level, which is great. Now we're going to top it off with our mulch. And you've got it. Don't forget your name tag. This one. This is Kaempferia galanga red flatleaf. And what's so great about her is twofold. She is a galanga, so she is called the lesser galanga, which is an edible spice. Her rhizomes are edible. You harvest them and you peel them and you cut them up and put them in your Oriental dinner. This is also a fun plant because if you leave this plant in a container, it multiplies. It multiplies like rabbits. Oftentimes, we started out with 72 of these plants a few years ago. We now have 265, simply because they multiply and multiply. They don't multiply that well in the ground, but they love it in a pot. But I like to put her in a pot. I like to put her in the ground because she has a gorgeous flat leaf against the ground. Put in your 1/4 cup of AgriLife. This one is very, very, very important that you get her height exactly right. If you don't, this little flat leaf, if you plant her below the ground level, her leaves will be in a pool of water and she'll rot. That's one of the biggest problems with Kaempferias, is planting them too deep. Again, you sprinkle the soil around her. And you can see these are Kaempferia albomarginata. They're a nice flat leaf with a nice maroon margin. You see that hole? And these holes? That is from the pine needles piercing her leaf. And it's nothing to worry about. Put mulch around her. Just a nice blanket. And there you've got her. And she's perfect. And now she will actually spread her leaves out a little bit more and she'll be a beautiful centerpiece to this. These leaves are actually curling because of the sun. The sun is a little direct right now, but this bed is usually in dense shade in the afternoon, so she'll be just fine. This is Alpinia oxyphylla China White. And she's a shell ginger. And like many shell gingers this spring, she bloomed. There were Alpinias all over our city blooming like crazy this past May. But now that she has bloomed, I don't want that. She looks a little ratty. So I want to trim her back. And Alpinia of this size, this is standard growing size or standard container size, we want to trim her back so that the plant will put enough energy into its new leaf stalks. So we cut it all the way down to the ground. If we left a spike on there of 6 inches, it just looks ratty. It looks spiky. So we trim it back all the way down. Now the plant will put energy into this, and it looks like a nice, neat plant. And next year, hopefully, they'll be blooming. Well, this concludes our planting section of the presentation. Hope you liked it.
And we've got a couple of questions.
Okay.
Natasha from Rodriguez would like to know what was in the little white pot that you sprinkled in first. The MicroLife?
The MicroLife, yes.
And can you talk about the MicroLife fertilizer a little
Sure. MicroLife is an organic fertilizer produced here in Houston. It's a 624. That particular container I had was 624 acidifier, which meant it had more sulfur in it. But you can use any balanced fertilizer, 12, 12, 12, 13, 13, 13, anything like that is fine. Just, go slow when you're first planting. Then go slow, go a little light on the fertilizer.
Okay. SP Jacka asks if he can find ginger seeds anywhere. The best place to find actual ginger seeds is for you to grow your own ginger plant. Leave the inflorescence on the plant, and it will naturally, it will often produce seeds. Some plants produce seeds easier than other plants. Usually a Hedychium species will produce seeds much easier than a Hedychium hybrid. But I don't often see seeds on the internet, mainly because you have to plant them right away. And usually by the time you get them on the internet, they're already dried. And so, Ann, where can you buy MicroLife fertilizer?
Oh, everywhere. MicroLife is everywhere. At any good nursery, you can buy it. I actually buy it in 40-pound bags. I buy 6 or 7 or 8 bags at a time because I use it all over the place. All nurseries.
And can you grow gingers in pots?
Yes. For instance, that Kaempferia galanga grows super well in a pot. Curcuma. It depends if you're talking about a container outside or a container on the inside. If you're growing inside, it must be in a bright sun. A container inside, absolutely. I grow. Fun experiment this year. I'm growing costas in a pot, and then I'm growing costas in the ground. I'm going to see who blooms first. So, that's fun. Anything else? All right, now there is a question that I always get at every presentation, and why aren't my gingers blooming? And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, light. For gingers to really bloom well, they need the right light. Oftentimes, there's in too much shade. Move them in more bright light, and you'll have probably a better chance at blooming. Fertilizer. Gingers need fertilizer to grow and bloom. They need a lot of food in order to make those gorgeous blooms. So fertilize them once a month with MicroLife and water. A lot of times it takes a lot of water for a plant to bloom. So light, fertilizer, and water. And you're going to have a wonderful garden companion.
We do have one more question about there was a question about edible roots. Do all gingers produce edible roots?
No, absolutely not. But funny enough, I used to have a poodle that liked to eat the leaves. No, they're not toxic to dogs. No, just certain varieties. In fact, in the handout, you'll see what varieties of gingers grow well here, and all those that I said are hardy here can grow in containers. But no, not all gingers are edible, but a lot of the flowers are. In fact, I will force some of our people here to eat a ginger flower just for fun. Tubular costas are delicious. They taste like spicy flowers.
Awesome. You want to see if anybody else, you want to wait a minute?
Sure.
If anybody else has any questions? It looks like it's fine.
It's a cottage house in the Heights, and in their backyard they have a huge greenhouse complex. It's jam tight with wonderful tropicals and gingers, and he is a wonderful source of information. He's a lovely man and a great nursery. Another one is online, Gingerwood Nursery. It's owned by the great Chapman. Chapman